Phill, thank you very much for coming on to the podcast.
Thank you for having me, Steve.
Obviously, we have met before. We are now friends, and I want you to come on, but I want to delve into where your mental health started for you.
Ooh, okay, a long story. So my journey with mental health started when I was 19.
Right, okay.
I, before then, brilliant childhood,
Mm-hmm.
was aware that I was adopted. So
All right.
that forms part of what I'm going to go into
Yeah.
as to where my mental health went. But had a brilliant childhood. Two, fantastic parents who I've never looked at as anything other than my parents. Certainly I didn't look at them as adopted parents with that. They were mum and dad.
Well, no, like I say, blood means nothing. You know what I mean?
No.
They brought you up as their own and
Absolutely.
treated you as their own, and that's important.
Yeah, a mother is someone, a mother's you, and a father is someone, a father's you. And,
Exactly.
it goes far beyond just
Yeah.
genetics. So yeah, for me, I had a brilliant childhood, grew up well,
Mm.
but I always wanted to be, I always had this craving that I needed to be liked by people.
Okay.
And would put on, even from an early age, an act
Yeah.
of trying to be a bit of a clown or trying to ingratiate myself perhaps more than I should have. And this led to, I suppose, my personality, really.
Because you wanted to be part of the
Yes.
crowd, or
Yeah.
yeah. If I admit it, I think I was exactly the same when I was a kid. I wanted to fit in. I wanted to be liked. So
Yeah.
I understand
Yeah,
that.
it's and so you adopt your personality, you change your personality almost to surround you, to suit your surroundings.
Yeah.
And I found that by doing that, looking backwards now, nearly 50 years later, so I'm fast approaching that age.
You're younger than me, aren't you?
49 in a few
Oh,
days.
are you?
Yeah.
Well, I'm 47 this year, so
Yes, you're still.
yeah, I'm younger. I'm still a baby.
You're
yet,
still a baby, yeah. You grow a beard still.
Yeah,
Right?
just about.
Tell
Just
you
got
what, 50 years age, I can't
Yeah.
grow a beard. But yeah, it's I sort of developed this ability to not be me.
Okay,
So by doing that, I never really, when I was growing up, had the advantage, we say, of knowing myself. Knowing
Is it
who I
fair to
was.
say you was a fake image of yourself?
Oh, totally.
Because you didn't know your real self, so you
Totally.
put up this persona. This
Yep.
is who I am, but I'm not really.
Yeah. And what that burns down to, moving slightly forward, then moving back here, what that burned down to that I found out was basically, because I was adopted, even though I went to a brilliant, beautiful family, there was that part of me that felt rejected. Yeah, so there was that little bit of
You
me
didn't feel
that felt abandoned.
part of it as such, in a
Exactly.
little way. Yeah.
So I felt like even though
Okay.
my family was my family, I wasn't part of that family. I was sort of outside the circle, if you like.
Yeah.
And to try and ingratiate myself into that circle, I made so much of an effort to try and be liked by trying to be funny,
Yeah.
witty, and trying to be, a friend to everyone, but in a different way. So if somebody presented with a certain characteristic of trait, I would try to mimic that in order for that person to like me. So if someone was,
Yeah.
very funny, I tried to be very funny. If someone was more serious, I would try to be more serious. And as a result, my personality was all over the place. And I found that looking backwards again,
Yeah.
that is certainly the building blocks for my mental health and for my degradation of my mental health. So moving forward, I hit 19, and I always wanted this certain job, all always growing up, and I wanted to join the civil service, and I wanted a specific role within the civil service, and I'm sure as your viewers will watch this, it will become apparent what that role was.
Yeah.
But I'm not going to outwardly say it.
Yeah.
So I achieved this at a very, very young age. I did the job voluntarily for a couple of months, and then I did the job full time, and I just hit 19. And at the time, I was the youngest individual of that age in Wales
Okay.
doing the job, which was
Yeah.
which is an achievement. But behind all that, again, I still had this personality where I was trying to, everyone I met, I was trying to sort of mimic.
People pleasing.
Yes.
Yeah.
Absolutely. But as a young child, what you don't realise is a lot of people are really switched on. And if they see this young kid who's, outwardly, apparently quite confident,
Yeah.
dare I say it, reasonably intelligent, and, trying to ingratiate themselves, a lot of people view that as cocky.
Yeah, they
Yeah,
can do. Yeah, I
and
can
and
see
and,
that.
and as a result of that, I put a lot of people's backs up. I know I did.
Yeah, people say, "Oh, he's full of himself. He loves himself. He
Absolutely
thinks
right.
he's the
Yeah,
bee's knees."
yeah,
And
absolutely right.
mm,
So I was about as popular as a fart in a lift,
mm,
really, with a lot of people. So, some people were genuinely kind, and I think probably understood, and they were the people who probably, if I look backwards, possibly had mental health afflictions themselves,
mm,
and could possibly see behind what I was doing and the
mm,
reason and the rationale why. But there was a significant minority of people who were
mm,
very cruel. And that culminated in about 10 months after me getting this job that I'd always wanted,
mm,
to being told, resign or we sack you.
yeah,
And my world at that point came to an end, quite literally. I remember a few days later, I had this bright idea of joining the RAF. And I went to Cardiff to the recruiting office,
mm,
and I filled out the paperwork, and it took me nearly 2 hours to find where I parked my car. I just my
really.
brain, I couldn't remember where I parked my car. I remember sitting on what was Tredegar Street
Mm,
in Cardiff. Is where the Admiral building is now.
I know. Yeah.
Used to be a car park there, and I had parked just behind it.
Mm,
But there was a bench nearby, and I just couldn't remember where I parked my car. It took me 2 hours. I remember sitting there with a Mars bar and a can of Coke,
wow.
trying to remember where I parked my car.
All confused,
Just
disorientated, and
my world had finished.
mm,
My world had ended, and moving backwards in time again.
yeah.
That, from where I am now, that was the start of, nowadays they call it post-traumatic stress disorder.
Mm,
Because for me it was a massive bereavement, if you like,
mm,
because bereavement isn't just when somebody passes away. A bereavement can be the loss of anything that you hold very dear and very close to yourself.
Do you know? And it's like when you say about that loss. When I say about people, when they say about grieving, and I've said to people before, you can grieve for people that are actually alive, and people say, "No,
Mm,
you can't." I said, "Yeah, you can."
absolutely.
It's the same level of grief.
Yeah,
One person's not you, but the other person is.
absolutely.
Mm,
Well, there was a very famous psychologist. I think it was a psychologist who, back in 1956, I believe,
mm,
formulated the 5 stages of grief,
yeah.
which is an element of grief that everybody will go through. They'll either go through all 5 stages, or they'll go through certainly some of the stages. Now, let me try and get this right on my head before Colin from TikTok, moderators, corrects me for my improper use of the English language.
Yeah, we will get them
Um,
when the snippets go on TikTok. Yeah, we'll get them.
yeah, they'll go. We
Yeah,
got that one wrong.
yeah.
So the first one effectively is disbelief. So you
Mm,
don't believe what's happened.
mm.
And these may not be in order, by the way, Colin. Just so you know. Um, then there's something called bargaining,
Yeah,
which is, oh, if I believe it's not true, then it's not going to be true. Then it's anger.
yeah,
Then it's depression,
yeah,
and then finally acceptance.
yeah.
And I think if most people look back at elements of their life where they've lost something dear, be it
Mm,
a career, be it a person, be it a family pet, be it anything, whatever's
mm,
important to you, if you lose it, it hurts. I think can probably identify with at least one of those
mm,
aspects of the process of grief. And certainly I went through all of them,
mm,
um, but stuck at number 4.
mm.
I stuck at depression,
Yeah.
and that then has followed me through, well, since I was 19. I'll be 49 in a few days, so for what, 30 years.
But back then, you wouldn't have known about depression. You
Not
wouldn't
a
have
clue.
known you were depressed. You
No,
wouldn't have known what you were going through. You wouldn't have even understood yourself,
no,
which you didn't.
no.
You
I
did.
didn't even know myself.
You just probably thought, well, I'm an oddball here, and
Yeah,
something is something wrong with me. I'm just like not wired right or something because
absolutely.
everybody else is normal
Yeah,
and I'm not.
yeah.
But what defines
What
defines
defines
normal?
normality?
Yeah.
Well, there is a
Mm,
definition for it, but
yeah.
normality. This the normal standards of normality effectively. I don't think can be measured at all, because what's
No.
normal for one is not what is not normal for
No.
another. And there are people out there who are eccentric. There are people out there who generally are miserable, low in mood,
Cause yeah,
and,
yeah.
and that suits them, and that suits their
Yeah, and
personality.
they're not depressed. They just miserable people.
That's just who they
Yeah,
are,
yeah.
and there's nothing wrong with that.
No, no.
Society needs all those aspects of people.
Of course they do, because like I said, I'm a positive person,
Mm.
always bouncing off the walls and that. But it'd be a boring world if every single person was like. As much as I want people to be happy, but if every single person was like me, I think the world would be chaotic.
Well,
You know.
if you look at there's there's a good theory actually, and I've seen
Mm.
some good evidence to say this. That do you
Mm.
remember the cartoon Winnie the Pooh?
Yes. Yeah.
Well, Winnie the Pooh apparently was written by an individual who was trying to describe different aspects of mental health.
Yeah.
So you've got Tigger,
Yeah.
ADHD.
Yeah.
You've got Eeyore,
Yeah.
depression. You've got, I can't remember the others, but if you look at each character, there is
The
a
personalities are different. Yeah.
personality assigned to each of them, and I think having looked at that a little bit, it's actually quite true and quite apt.
Yeah.
But yeah, if we lived in a world full of Tiggers, then we couldn't enjoy the whole cartoon of Winnie the Pooh, could we?
Yeah. No. No.
Because
No. No.
it would just be one dimensional.
No.
So yeah, absolutely right. But yeah, that culminated then in a few years of wandering for me, not knowing what I wanted. Well, I knew what I wanted to do. I wanted to get
Yeah.
back into that job again,
Yeah.
stupidly. But I'm one of these people. I don't like. I'll accept failure in anybody, Steve, in
Yeah.
anybody. Or as I
But
just can't accept it in myself.
I know, but we got to fail to be able to succeed,
Yeah.
because we learn through failure
Mhm.
to succeed. You know,
Absolutely.
and a lot of people don't understand that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Or want, like you said, want to accept that.
Yeah. But again, as a 19-year-old,
Exactly.
with you just no, right, failed. Not going to happen again. I'm going to move forward. I'm going to do this. So having job spun really for a number of years, having worked in everything from a bank
Yeah.
to a manager for McDonald's, manager for pizza, worked for BT as an operator, the
Yeah.
old 100. I used to love that job. That was
Really?
Great. Yeah, I really enjoyed that.
I thought
job.
you would have hated it.
No, I really enjoyed it. Actually, it was brilliant. It was brilliant.
Yeah.
Really good people.
Yeah.
Really, really good people. It was a time in my life actually that if you could say what part of your life would you relive again, I'd probably go and relive that 18 months I spent working for BT.
Yeah. But maybe it helped you in a way. Maybe it made you feel a little bit normal at that time.
Do you know, it did. I
Mm.
come across a great group of people who I really bonded with, and again, if you look at the program, the old cartoon, the Raggy Dolls, it was a little bit like that.
Yeah.
There's a lot of imperfect people
Yeah.
working there, and as an imperfect person myself, not that everyone who's imperfect works for BT, by the way. Just to clarify that, there's a lot of very safe people.
Yeah.
But but ultimately, yeah, the people I associated myself with were all in one aspect or another broken.
Yeah.
So I fitted in, and and probably, if I'm honest, it's probably been the only place up until recently where I felt I have fitted in. But anyway, onward I went, and I wanted to rejoin this job within the civil service. So in 2001, I did, and I remained in that job until 2019. So 18 years doing that particular role. But what I didn't realise was the job was the cause of my depression. So
Was it the job or the people? Or a bit of both?
It was both. Definitely both. Going on a sidecar, I remember my driving test, and when I took my driving test, my mum always said, "Always wear a shirt and tie to something important." So I did.
I always got told that.
Oh,
we don't need to know. We moved from that.
Yeah, we know.
Yeah.
Fat in a t-shirt, but but ultimately, yeah, I went with a shirt and tie, and at the time I was working for this nondescript organisation, and I had a tie pin that showed this organisation what it was.
Yeah.
And the driving instructor said, "Oh, I used to work for that organisation." And it was like, "Oh, really? Well, why did you ever leave?" Type thing, And he said, "Phil," I love the job, didn't like the people.
No.
And I quickly got to understand, remember that it wasn't the people that we came into contact with day to day. It wasn't the so we call service users. It was colleagues.
Yeah.
It was colleagues. And I certainly, when I went through my second stint in this organisation, was I bullied? Yeah, absolutely. I got a face for bullying, unfortunately. Significantly so by certain people who made up lies and rumours about me, and cost me a lot of, well, certainly cost me my advancement
And,
within that
and that's
organisation.
shocking because obviously I'm not going to give it away because you don't want to say what it is, but I know anyway, don't
Yeah,
I?
yeah,
But it's shocking of people in such power
yeah.
that do that.
Yeah. So, some of the people that I
Mm,
used to work with,
mm,
and I can honestly say this, some
mm,
of the very worst people I have met in this world.
mm,
There are some very evil and toxic people who live in that world
mm,
and thrive off the power that that job gives them.
mm.
They're also, on the other side, some of the most beautiful souls I've ever met in
Exactly.
this
What
world
I'd use is
that
the
do
word
that.
corruption because there's a lot of it.
Yeah,
Mm,
certainly where I was
mm,
working, yeah, I
mm.
could tell you many stories
Yeah,
about many people who, you know,
yeah.
rose to very senior levels who were extremely corrupt.
Yeah.
And and
Just
that,
don't give any names or anything
of
else.
course
No,
not. No would
no,
I. At the end of the
no.
day, that's
Mm.
they have to live with that. And
Well, they got to go to bed at night. Can they
yeah,
sleep at night? Maybe for
exactly.
now, but that guilt will get them in the end.
Well, karma does always have a way of coming back at us at
Karma's
some
good and
point.
bad, and one way or another, those people
Yeah,
will have their
yeah,
karma.
and and that's absolutely fine
Mm,
and dandy for them. But ultimately, yeah,
mm,
it just reinforced the negativity that I held in
mm.
myself. So I would go to work every day, and I I'd be scared. I'd be scared.
Really,
Yeah, totally. That's the best word to
that's
describe
saddening
it.
to hear that he was really scared to go to
I was
work. That's
scared to go to
sad.
work, and not
Mm.
because of the job that I did. The job I did never scared me.
No, it's the people.
It was the people I was about
Yeah.
to introduce myself with,
Mm,
because I wanted them to like me so much
mm,
that I knew I was trying too hard, but I didn't know how to not try as hard as I was.
mm.
Um, and unless you've really been in my shoes or in shoes similar, it's really difficult to probably get your head around what I'm trying to say.
No, no, I know what you're trying to say because I've always tried to be a fit in and laugh at people's jokes that I don't find that even
Yeah,
funny.
yeah,
You know what I mean?
absolutely.
Just to be accepted, being in a room which I don't feel welcome in, but I try and make myself fit.
Yeah,
And this is why I disconnected myself from so many people because I didn't belong in that environment or they didn't belong in my environment
yeah,
because they made me feel uncomfortable. Then I felt I was putting a fake image on myself to be liked, which I thought this is not right.
true.
And many a time since, because I've learned so much, if I'm in a room and I'm felt that I've got to try to be accepted,
Mm.
I'll walk out of that room because I'm like, nah, they don't deserve my time,
Yeah,
you know. But
and
at the back then, like you try so hard to do the opposite. You go, oh well, what can I do? What can I say? Can I make them laugh? Or what can I do to make
yeah,
them like me, so
absolutely.
I can be accepted? So every time I walk into this room, they like Steve or they like Phill,
Yeah.
and that's wrong.
I
Mm,
would, this
mm,
this particular job had at the beginning of it a really good social aspect,
mm,
and as a a youngish kid, I rejoined when I was 24,
mm,
and so the social aspect was good,
mm,
and I would find I would go to events, and I would always leave after about an hour. I would just make the excuse
mm.
I go to the toilet and I just go home, and it's be,
Disappear in the silent.
yeah,
Yeah.
it's because I just felt like I don't fit here.
Mm.
They don't really want me here. Nobody really likes me anyway.
Did it make you feel anxious and?
Oh, totally.
Mm,
I lived in a state of constant, perpetual anxiety
yeah,
for nearly
and
20 years.
I bet you when you went home and you left those places, you were overthinking it for hours and
Yeah,
hours and hours. Now, why don't they like me?
yeah.
What's wrong with me?
Every conversation I would have with somebody, and I still do it now to a degree, I analyse. Did I say something wrong? Could I
Mm,
have said something better? Could have somebody taken that the wrong way? And that is so mentally exhausting.
mm,
It really is. And it caused episodes in my
mm,
career there where unfortunately I needed to take time away
mm,
because my head just couldn't take anymore. So it got to the stage where I needed to take time off for my mental health reasons, but I would
mm,
use other excuses because I didn't want to admit to myself, perhaps, that I could see that I had a mental health problem. Because the type of job that I did was big, roughy, toughy. You're supposed to go and fix the world and
mm.
not have any issues yourself. So I couldn't admit to
And
myself
you're probably
what was
worried
wrong.
you get bullied over that then. And go, well,
Well,
come
yeah,
on, Phil, there's nothing wrong with you. You're
absolutely.
just having a bad day. Or what's wrong with you?
Yeah. Well,
You know?
when I first
Mm,
used the real reason. Look, I'm
Mm.
struggling. I'm depressed, and I went off.
Mm.
There were a number of people who going, "What, Phil? Nah. He's always happy. He's laughing and joking all the time. He's like a clown,
Mm.
and he can't be depressed." Um, but I was, I was, and I remember something that another former colleague had said to me many, many years ago. A very, very wise man,
Mm.
who I took a lot of things from. Um, I won't say his name, but his first
Mm.
name is Norman.
Mm.
And basically, he said, "Phil, behind every cloud is a sad person."
Mm.
And when you look at society, when you look at the likes of Robbie Williams and people like that, Stephen Fry, and
Mm.
a whole host of wonderful individuals who try to make other people feel good, try to make them laugh,
To mask what's going on with them.
they are the ones who are significantly broken themselves.
I'm going to touch up on that because someone sent me a video the other day and it was powerful and I cried my eyes out. There was two guys, don't know whether you've seen it going around on TikTok, and they were at the football. The one guy looked really, really well. You thought he was sad,
Yes, I've
right?
seen that one.
And the other guy was upbeat. Yeah, we winning, doing this and that. And then all of a sudden, rolling it forward, he turns up to the match, and the guy was all energetic and that. He wasn't there no more committed,
Yeah.
and that I broke my heart. And people don't realize just because somebody is happy and they laugh and are joking, it doesn't mean because I'm sure you've done this many times. I'm good at masking it.
Oh,
If I want to,
absolutely.
if I was severely depressed today, right, I could do a video and no one would know any different.
Yeah,
You know,
absolutely right.
I don't because I want people to see when I am like that, so I help people. But I could quite easily do that, and I used to do that, and I stopped doing it. So people's perception, and he's all right, nothing wrong with him.
Yeah. The hardest thing in the world to do, I believe, Steve, is to look at yourself honestly in a mirror.
Yes.
That's the hardest thing we can do, especially people like you and I who
Mm.
are afflicted by, depression
Mm.
and, all the stuff that follows it along with that. To look at yourself in the mirror and try and find just the hint, the smallest part of you that's positive, that you find positive.
Yeah, because certainly the mirror is, I've said, is become my best friend now because. And I know you would have done it. You would have stood in that mirror and you would have hated down yourself. You would have picked bones in your body, the way you looked,
Yeah.
the way you carried yourself, the way you talked.
Yeah.
And you would literally verbalize it to yourself. Look
Yeah.
at me. Look at the state of me.
Oh, totally.
Who would like me? I'm horrible. I said on a video before, and I have done this. I've stood in the mirror. I hated myself so much. I've punched myself in the face and that's bad.
Yeah.
Because I got that angry myself.
Yeah.
And it's horrible.
No, I fully get it. I dare say that when this airs, I'll watch it and I'll go to myself, Phil, how on earth have you allowed yourself to get so fat?
No.
And it's, to be
But
honest,
forget about that.
yeah,
You're a great person.
Yeah, but
And
to be honest, I'm at a stage in my life now
Mm.
where I carry too much weight. I know I carry too much weight.
Are you happy?
Yeah, and ironically, I don't have high cholesterol, which is amazing. I'm 17 stone and 5'8". So my cholesterol should be through the roof, but it's not. It's tested recently.
But if you're happy in yourself, if you want to lose weight because you think, it's something I want to do for me, not for anyone else, not to fit in, that's fine. But if you're happy the way you are, that's what I said. Are you happy? Don't worry about it.
Personally, I am. Personally, I am.
Don't worry about it. Enjoy life.
I like a glass of wine and I like a bag of chips.
Yeah. So do we
and
all.
often I like a Clark's pie over a bag of chips. Other pies are available.
But other pies are available. Yeah.
The takeaways are available.
Yeah. But we all like takeaways.
We certainly do.
Yeah.
But ultimately, it's about. It is about just being happy with yourself. And I think, honestly, if I'm going to be really honest, probably for the first time, don't get me wrong, if a really nice looking woman walks past me, do I suck my stomach in? Absolutely, I do. Yeah, not it makes any difference. I suck that in, and this gets bigger. But ultimately, I think that's just that's the vanity in us, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, you just remember saying if we go around for years and years, a load of guys think they're in Benidorm or somewhere, and they were sat around a table, and they all sucking their stomachs in because the nice woman goes past, and then all of a sudden their stomachs come and they hit the table flying. I think it's brilliant, but I think, do you know what? Any man that says he doesn't do that, right, is lying. Because they do, especially on all these suck it in.
Of course we do. And it's
we don't need to, but we
no, it's just us, isn't it?
Yeah.
And you're absolutely right, Steve. We should just be, as long as we're happy with ourselves, it doesn't matter if we got 3 heads and a purple in colour. It doesn't matter.
No.
What matters is that we are happy and that we are trying to do something in society that enriches that society and not detracts from it.
Exactly.
And that's my view, and I think that's the sort of place that I've arrived at now. I sit where I am today. That's where I am, and having left that really toxic, horrible organisation that I worked for, under some really unfair circumstances in the end, and I'll touch on it briefly if I may.
Yeah, of course you can. Like I say, you can say anything you want, and anything you don't want to say, don't say.
No, it's fine. It's just that I was in this organisation, and when my head wasn't in the right place, I made some decisions that were wrong.
Okay.
Not criminal, not immoral or anything like that.
No.
But just in the eyes of the organisation I worked for, conflicted with their internal discipline policies. The result of that was I was investigated for 4 years.
Wow.
Now, you try and have a condition like I've got and be investigated for that length of time.
They must put you in a dark place.
The pressure for that period of time in my life, how I didn't complete that word.
Yeah, I know.
Was amazing. Which
takes a lot not to, doesn't it?
Well, I attempted it 3 times, if I'm honest. I attempted it 3 times, and each time I found a reason not to do it.
Well, I'm glad you didn't, and I'm glad you failed at it, because the world is a better place because you are in it, and always remember that.
Thank you. But, that leads on. I'm just going to go for the caveat, if I may. I'm going to go into a bit of a spooky story.
Go on.
If I can.
Yeah, go on.
Right. So, having left this job, I thought that was the end of it. And a year later, I had a conversation with one of the union representatives, shall we call him, who says, "Oh no, Phil, even though you've left the organisation, they still want to do a tribunal." And it's like, what? God, why? So anyway, look, I said, look, I'm not going to offer any defence.
Yeah.
Not because I couldn't.
Yeah.
Because I didn't want to.
No, it's a pointless exercise anyway, isn't it?
Well,
you know what I mean.
I find out later why, which I'll briefly touch on as well. But to cut a very long story short, I was given 2 weeks' notice. They're going to have this tribunal. I said, look, I'm not going to engage with it. I've left this organisation for over a year ago. The things I were accused of were really Mickey Mouse. And they were Mickey Mouse. It was nothing dishonest.
Picking at anything that they could just to find some kind of dirt to drag out.
And if you dig hard enough for anyone, you're going to find.
Of course you can.
And they took things and spun them to have a different meaning, basically. Anyway, tribunal happened, and it came forward that, well, if you hadn't resigned, we'd have sacked you. Okay. Now that again, buff. Was like a hammer blow, because then, as a result of that, a lot of my former colleagues, who I was in contact with and who, having even left this organisation, still in contact with, dropped me straight away. Wow. It was just like, oh God, no, you're a rotten apple now. We can't associate ourselves with you. You're the biggest piece of dog turd that you've ever come across.
Well, reverse that around, because that's what they are like.
Well,
I
see what you're saying, but I personally still have a lot of affection for some of them, even though they've done what they've done.
You're going to, because you like me, you don't hold on to hate, because hate consumes you, so and you don't wish them any bad.
No.
No, so, and I get that.
But that again was just reinforced the abandonment, if you get my meaning. So, I'd worked in this organisation for nearly all of my working life, just about. And that identity that I had through that organisation was destroyed. Completely destroyed. All the good things I had achieved within that organisation, and I had achieved an awful lot, were just wiped out. Completely, utterly wiped out. And that probably hit me more than anything. But as a result of that, it was about a week later, and my mental health really took a turn. And as a result of that, you won't believe this, but as a result of that decision made by this organisation, they decided to put it in the press.
Wow, so they made it public.
And so anyway,
And we know what the press do, don't we? They rip it apart.
Well,
They dig more dirt up.
I would love
Mm.
to tell you, the
Mm.
article that the Sun Online did
Mm.
had about one line of truth in it, and that was my name, and everything else was fictitious.
Yeah, because they thrive off lies.
Of course they do. Of course they do. But anyway, I was working in a different job at the time, and I loved this job. I was really, really enjoying it. It was a complaints job where I was investigating complaints against staff, but also complaints about financial irregularity and things like that. And I absolutely, it was with a good
Yeah.
group of people and a brilliant management team, and it was really, really good. And unfortunately, this came out, and because of the nature of this organisation,
Yeah.
I had a conversation on the Friday with the head of the organisation that says, Phill, and these are his exact words, Phill, we love you, we really do. You and what you've been put through by this last organisation, he said, is quite simply the most shameful thing I've ever witnessed in my life. He said it's ridiculous, it's unnecessary, and he said, I don't understand why they've done that. Unfortunately for us, because we've got an image, we can't attach you to our image. So unfortunate. And I said, don't say anything. I said, I'll offer my resignation here and now. So that job didn't also cost me the first job. It also then cost me a second job.
Right.
As a result of that. So what does that then do to your mental
health?
psyche?
Yeah.
Down the pan you go again. So this was about a week later, and I got to the stage where I had become so low that I had decided that my only option was to remove myself from society completely.
And you thought it'd be better off if you wasn't,
yeah,
for everyone else.
And and I've seen this since in the job I'm trying to do currently. I become really happy, really happy. All that pressure, all that negativity that I had attached to myself and I thought society was attaching to me didn't matter anymore. It had gone, it had vanished. The weight that I had on my shoulders, which is like having 2 10-ton boulders on each shoulder, were just removed. And I planned meticulously where I was going to go, what I was going to do, what time I was going to do it, what I was going to take with me, so I could be identified, so that my family didn't want my family thinking he's a missing person. So I took my driving license with me and everything, and I meticulously planned what I was going to do. And I stood. I won't mention what, but I stood at this location, and near to this location, there was a platform. Give it away now. But it was early in the morning, very, very early in the morning. I had timed it so a certain thing would come from a certain direction and hit me. And I stood there in position, waiting for this object to come my way. And I look up at this platform, and it's very early in the morning now. There was no one there before. And there was this old lady stood there. And this old lady, I've never seen her before, but she was dressed in very old-fashioned clothing. I remember she had like a green like plastic waterproof Macintosh Macon, a brown hat, and a brooch. And she had the most beautiful blue eyes I'd ever seen. And I thought to myself, I can't do this with someone there. I can't have the pain of that person watching me do it. So I got off where I was, got onto the platform, and there was no one there.
Really?
There was no one there.
Wow. That was a guardian angel.
And this platform you could see for a good 200-300 meters down to the road. Where you just see this person walking away. Even if this person was Usain Bolt, you just see them running. There was no one there, Steve. No one.
That was the message being sent to you.
And that was the day that I really thought, come come on, Phil, you can't do this no more.
Mm.
You know, you've got to toughen up. You've got to realise the world is a hard place, and you've got to become harder to fit in it. And that wasn't the beginning
Mm.
of my recovery, but it was perhaps the end of the beginning of my of how I was so depressed at that point. And yeah, moving on from that,
Did you ever tell your family?
not for a long time,
No.
not for a very long time.
Probably, yeah. It was fear of.
Shame.
Yeah.
Shame, Steve.
It's nothing to
Shame
be
of
ashamed
feeling,
of.
you know, people look at that, and I'm sure there are people who will comment on having seen this. Oh, what a coward! What a coward!
No.
You know, you're taking yourself out. What about your family? What about the people that love you? And yeah,
Because people
they're
don't,
right.
unless they've been through it, they don't understand it.
Not at all.
I've been through it. A lot of people watching this out have been through it, and you know, you can see how upset you are, raw emotion, and it's a dark place. And people to comment when they know nothing about it really frustrates me, because
they could have.
you know, you know, it would have been a time years ago I might have said, "Oh, selfish," you know, people will do that, but unless they've been there and they got nowhere else to turn, because like you said, what you touched up on when you said a sense of relief. When I was going through it, I was excited about doing it because I thought that was it. My pain's going to be over.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it's horrible to know that you can get excited about something like that.
Yeah, totally. And the horrible thing is as well, Steve, you convince yourself totally that the entire world would be better without you in it. You convince
100% you
yourself,
do.
you know, my children, my children are too good for me. My wife is too good for me. My friends are too good for me. You know, they don't deserve this horrible individual that I am. Being around them,
And you believe that at the time.
yeah, totally. And you know, you just want to think, you know, if I remove myself from it, it gives them a chance to perhaps find happiness somewhere else. And that's what I believed. I really did.
But reality is, their happiness is within you.
Oh, so I get that now. But this is the cruelest part of people who undertake and complete that particular act. Is that that's honestly what they believe. You know, people will go and call them selfish. People will go and call them, you know, all sorts of bad words. But ultimately, unless you yourself have been in that condition and you've walked in that individual shoes, not similar shoes, but their shoes, you cannot understand it. And you know, it's such a horrible thing to go through. And I think this is one of the reasons I've come on here today. It's very rare for someone to come actually on and say, look, I've actually survived almost unaliving myself.
You have, and I'm glad you have. And I'm glad that image that you've seen, that woman that you've seen, was there that night.
Yeah.
That was sent to you for a reason. To say that you got a life to live. You got so much to do, so much help and support to put out there yourself. You know, and that's why I believe that you've got a purpose. We've all got a purpose, and I know my calling, and I think you know your calling.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, I was reading statistics the other day, and last year 6,039 people took their own lives.
Wow, that's a lot.
And if you look at that in round figures, that's one person every 90 minutes in England and Wales completes that act.
Because there's not enough support out there.
There's not enough support,
and that's why I do what I do from my platform to help. And there was a few years ago now, there's a guy that went to my gym. I always remember him, bald head, big guy, and he trained every single day, right? So never really spoke to him much, just passing, hi, how are you? And that was it, never really interacted with him much. And I think it must have been about 3 years ago, I would say. And I found out that one day he went to the gym, jumped off a bridge, and nobody knew.
Nobody knew.
He obviously felt that he couldn't reach out. He obviously felt that no one would understand. He obviously felt that, as you said at the beginning, oh, I've just got to put this persona on. I've just got to be happy. I got to be, you know, upbeat, and because I got to be a man. You know, I got to be a cave animal, and I got to show dominance of the world and all that.
Absolutely.
You know, and if he'd had someone to talk to, if he'd had understanding, maybe if he had social media to go to at the time, then that could have saved him, but he didn't.
Yeah, and that's why it's so important to talk about it. You know, especially people of our generation. You know, we are very good at hiding it. Very, very good at hiding it. The younger generation, I think, are getting better at, you know, not masking as much.
Yeah.
You know, there's still an element that goes on, of course, there is, and there will always be.
Yes, it will.
But, you know, there are, you know, it seems it's easier now, it's more accepted now, whereas,
It is,
you
yeah.
know, in our time frame, going back even 10 years ago, you couldn't really talk openly about things like this.
Well, you couldn't. I've said this time and time again. I miss my father. I love my father. Right? But if my father was here right now, he would say to me and you, depression and anxiety is just a form of people getting attention, because he never believed it.
Yeah.
I never, ever, he knows now because he's watching me, he never knew what I went through.
No.
He never knew what I was good. My father, I always remember my father, when I ended my marriage with, obviously, the girl's mother at the time, because I had to, and I was all over the shop. I was severely depressed and going through a breakdown. Girls obviously stayed with me, and I had to sort that out. I remember the words of my father, "You need to man up." I always remember those words, and I thought, there's something wrong with me then. There's something wrong with me.
Not at all.
You know?
I think people of a different generation say that because they don't know what the right words are.
And I think, and I realise that now. I think that because I always remember as well, it was like a month later, sitting in my office, couldn't run my business. My mother, my stepmother, my father were there, and my father, they were trying to do things. And I remember just sat there, just started crying. And I remember the two of them looking up at me, and I was crying.
Yeah.
And they didn't know how to react.
No.
And they just put their head down, carried on, and I walked out. And I was like, wow.
But that's typical of that generation.
It is typical of that generation.
You know,
it is.
the sort of, you know.
Like, yeah, we both going off here,
both going, yeah.
But,
Not doing each other any favours.
Oh, God.
These trolls are going to love this, aren't they?
I know. We've got a topic of conversation now. Two grown men on a podcast crying. What's wrong with you?
You'll have Colin on you now.
I know. Yeah.
Sorry,
I'm not calling Monday Legend if anyone thinks that. Not that Colin.
No. This is
He's a good guy.
This is a random person that I have come up with in my own mind called Colin. And, you know, Steve and I, we are pals, and he was telling me about, I was watching one of his TikToks the other day about being corrected for using the word starving.
Yes, that's good.
In one of his snapshots. And, you know, I just imagined somebody sat at home with a thesaurus.
Yeah.
Glasses like this. With a thesaurus. And going through and going, hang on a minute. No, starving. Right. Now, to be starving, you have to be without food and nourishment for approximately 10 days. And, you know, have you been without food and nourishment without 10 days, Stephen? I don't think so, have you? Not at all. So you can't be starving. What you are is mouldy peckish.
Yes, that's true. Mouldy
peckish is a better description. You know, I was saying to my friend Gerald the other day. Gerald and I we live on our own, but we live next door to each other. Okay. Yeah. Now Gerald and I we share a common theme in that we both love goldfish. Yeah. My best mate is called Goldie. Yeah. He doesn't talk a lot, but I do a lot of talking to him. Sometimes he swims away from me. I don't understand why, but he has enough and he swims away. Anyway, so the other day, I was saying to, I called actually, I knocked his door, and I went, Gerald, it's Colin here. Would you like to come to the public house with me and have a libation refreshment, Colin? No, it is Colin. Gerald! And so Gerald answered the door and said, yes, I would love to have a libation with you, Colin, if you just allow me to change my clothing, because there is a bar wench behind the bar that I'm rather taken with, and I wish to adorn myself in clothes befitting of trying to appropriate a romance. So anyway, we go to this pub and I'm there, and there's a man at the bar, and he's a big bloke. I know him. I've seen him several times, but I had to correct him as well, because he went to the bar and he said to the bar lady, "Bar lady, can I have a pint of creme de menthe? I'm parched." And I went, "You what? You're parched? You can't be parched. The parched is a pity. No, if something's parched, it means it's not been rained on for at least 30 to 90 days. It doesn't mean that you hadn't had a drink for an hour or two." Well, I had to correct him. So I tapped him on the shoulder and he turned around and I told him this, and I woke up in a bush. Sorry, I just went off on there, didn't I?
Nobody expected that then, did they? I actually enjoyed that.
There's loads more of that, guys. Loads more of that. We've got Colin, we've got Gerald. I could make an entire series out of Colin Gerald.
Yeah.
No issues whatsoever. But
I think you kind of were quite off the
just make it up as we go along. But ultimately, I just wanted to inject a little bit of humour and light.
And it's important. We went deep, have a little bit of humour, and that's why I always say with these podcasts, that's a good thing about it is we can have in-depth talks, and then just lighten the mood a little bit later on.
Totally.
And people like that, people will definitely appreciate that. I think people will be laughing at that.
I hope so. Can't do that too long. My voice goes.
I was going to say, how did you come up with the voice?
Lots of practice, but no, it's. And then, just moving on from that, I having left that organisation, I didn't know what I was going to do, and then it was another mate of mine, a chap named Stuart, who I believe you might be meeting next week.
Yes, Stuart will be coming on the podcast next week, and he might be watching this right now, because you guys are watching it, whatever time of the day it is. But and he's going to have an interesting conversation with myself as well. And I know he's good friends with Phill, and to be honest, when I spoke to him the other day, I said to him he sounded like Phill.
Sorry,
he did. He sounded exactly like him. But no, it seems like a lovely chap. So I'm excited to get him on here as well. And we will have a pleasant conversation, I'm sure.
He's one of life's real good eggs, and I'll let him tell you his story, but it's an interesting one.
Yeah, well, as I said, I like, obviously I knew a little bit of you because we've met, we speak a lot and stuff like that. But that's why I didn't want you to say too much on the phone the other day because it's important to come on here.
Absolutely.
And the good thing was with Stuart, I've had a conversation with him for 5 minutes on the phone. I know nothing about him, so it would be good to get to know him as a person through the podcast. And you're his story, to be honest. We've all got a story to tell, haven't we? We've all got one. Some good, some bad.
Well, but that's a rich tapestry of life, isn't it? It molds us to who we become.
But I got to ask you.
Go on.
Where do you see yourself in 5 years?
Oh, where do I see myself in 5 years?
People always ask me, so I'm asking you.
Okay, so in 5 years' time, well, a lot of that is 5 years' time. I'd like to think that I've lost at least 3 stone. That is a genuine aim. I've got.
But if you want to, you can do it.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's easy or difficult. It is.
Mental attitude.
It is. Yeah.
Mate. Positive mental attitude, big time. I've got a friend called Karen, who's a personal trainer, who's trying to get
Karen.
Karen.
Oh, we've had plenty of Karens online.
Yeah. Oh,
I want to say Karen, but it's not. It's Harold. Remember that? My father used to I stepped on and said, Harold. I know.
You dirty young man.
I know. That's it. Yeah. Because I didn't know that because my father sat me down. I watched all the black and white ones, the colour ones of them, and I loved it. And because I think they were best friends in real life or something.
Yeah, I think they were really, quite close in real life as well.
But they both are. That series, I'd have to find that because I could watch that again. It's funny. It's stuff like that. Only Fools and Horses. They're all brilliant.
Yeah. And my wife looks at me and she shakes her head. I'm sat there and I'm watching Last of Summer Wine.
Oh, they are brilliant.
I love Last of Summer Wine.
Yeah.
And my father got me. He used to love all the scenery and things like that. 3 dodgy-old men going around the countryside being foolish. Wonderful.
Yeah.
It's just total escapism. And you're right, Porridge, Dad's Army.
Hello.
Hello.
Was it Rennie? No, it was like wrong, wasn't it? Was it?
Rennie!
That's it.
Oh, Yvette!
Yeah.
That's brilliant, just honest comedies.
Yeah.
I think that, I don't know if that's the right phrase, but just honest comedy.
You don't get them like in no more though.
No.
When was the last time you could say you watched a program like that you barely laughed? Because I can't remember. Well, last time you watched a film and you barely laughed, because Steve Martin. Yeah. I can't think of the other actor, but you'll know who he is now when I say the film. Dirty Rotten Scoundrels.
Oh,
and they were both were both scammers, weren't they?
That's
and
right.
I always remember me and my father, and it was the first time, right? My father was a funny guy. My father, you would have got on my father because my father was good with his jokes. I can't do it. My father just bounced them off. But I always remember that we was watching Dirty Rotten Scoundrels and my father was crying, laughing. Yeah. It was so funny when he sat in a chair because he was pretending he was disabled, wasn't he?
Yeah.
What was the other actor, man? Michael Caine, was it?
I honestly don't remember.
And he said, "Oh, well, we'll test your legs out." He was pretending to be a doctor, and he was whipping his legs, and he was in pain. He's going, "Can you feel that?" And he's going, "No." Brilliant. brilliant.
It is brilliant.
But you don't get any of that no more
No.
because people got to watch what they say, and the comedy is gone.
Can you imagine doing that now? And
Yeah.
disability sort of charities and things like that would
Yeah.
get it taken off air in seconds.
Oh yeah.
It's cruel, it's this, it's that. Don't get me wrong, there's an element of that, but I think as we discussed yesterday, we were having a quick chat. Comedy, good comedy, is about offending somebody.
Yeah.
It's
not actually offending, but offending. Yes.
Yeah, it's not about going out there to be cruel or nasty.
No.
But it's about talking about a situation where and making light of it. Making it jokey and so on. But we're not allowed to do that anymore.
No, do you know my favourite comedian, and I know like he's retired now, but I believe he retired because I think he knew things were changing. Is Lee Evans?
Yeah.
He's awesome.
Yeah.
He was a comedian which is real to life, and he's the only man I've ever known to sweat in a suit.
Oh my god!
But he was brilliant, and I love it. I seen a sketch of him on Jonathan Ross and he's just funny all the time because he cannot be serious. Because I remember he's on Jonathan Ross and he was sliding down the chair and he's going, "What's wrong with this chair?"
Yeah.
Just like what?
I think the other one that's still about that I absolutely love is Peter Kay.
Yes, I haven't seen any of Peter Kay stuff
If
for a
you're
while.
not-
Not for I have seen him, but not for a while. Like,
No, he's he went off for a while. I think something happened in his personal life. That's personal to him.
Yeah.
Should remain between him and other people. But for me, watching Peter Kay is the only time in my life that I laughed so much I shit myself. Seriously,
really?
Seriously, I did. It was the one when he was doing the biscuit in the tea, and it was the biscuit breaking in the tea, and it was no, Mom, get a spoon, quick, me biscuit's falling in me brew. He puts his fingers in, and he just goes on with that. And I got to be honest, I think I always stopped breathing. I was laughing that much, and a bit of poo come out.
Oh god!
Just laughing so much. It was, I think, one of those comedy situations, a bit like Del Boy falling, through the bar. And things like that it fixes itself in your head.
The one that got me was Roy Chubby Brown. And when he said he said, "Oh, my daughter come home and she told me she's pregnant," and he said, "I asked her, do you know who the father is?" And she said, "When you open a tin of beans, do you know which one's going to make you fart?"
Yeah.
And I thought that was brilliant.
But we're losing that as well, aren't we? With those golden comedians. Who
You are,
because
they're not allowed to say certain things because people will be too offended. But that's what I was saying. They're not really offending. They're just doing it as a comedy sketch, and people they take it so literal now, don't they?
Well, big business, unfortunately, being offended is no big business, isn't it?
Well, yeah, because was it yes, was it you I was talking to when I was on about Eddie Murphy?
Yes.
Like Eddie Murphy when he done Raw. Oh my god, I'm going to try and find that tonight. Yeah. He was awesome comedian. Yeah. He was absolutely awesome. The things he used to say in that, and he would be racist as hell.
Oh,
but he wouldn't mean it. It was just part of the sketch.
Yeah.
But he was funny.
I think people got to put things into the context that they belong. Don't they?
Yeah.
If you've got someone that's really been trying to be hurtful and degrading towards somebody, then it is right as a society we judge that and we go, you can't do it. But I think when somebody is doing it in a way to just be humorous and not to cause, and genuinely not to cause offence.
Exactly.
Genuinely not to cause anybody any harm or any hurt. But, sometimes you've got to make light of situations that you find yourself in. And we are at a point now, I believe, where there is no more comedy left to give in this world if it keeps going the way it is. And if we lose our sense of humour, what else do we begin to lose? Our self-identity, our sense of purpose, a lot.
That's why I say my father, he was so funny, the jokes he used to come up with. But I remember the one day he was telling my girls, he said, when your father was born, he said, I got to be honest, he was the ugliest thing I've ever seen. And he says randomly come out with stuff like that. I said, well, you can't go say it. He said, you come out with this big ball of hair, and he said, and then he goes on, let's be honest, he said, everyone, when they have a baby, everyone goes, oh, isn't he pretty? And he said, but babies are ugly. They're all ugly. And I suppose he has a point to a degree.
Well,
they get their features later on down the road, don't they? But we all go, oh, okay, that's beautiful.
Well, it was often said in my family that when I was born, my father slapped the midwife. What's that? What have you created there? But, it's... There we go. The midwife slapped my father. That's
I know.
But,
don't worry, someone will correct it in the comments.
Oh,
somebody.
Colin will be there.
Yeah, we'll be like that. I know.
But no, so that was that. But anyway, it led me to going back to education, believe it or not. So
Yeah.
you have this this boy from the valleys, from Ebervale originally,
Mm.
middle of nowhere, left school with nothing,
Mm.
literally nothing at all. Thought I was dull as bricks. Well, still think I'm dull as bricks.
Well, you're not.
No, I know.
You're not.
That's just me being.
Yeah.
You know.
I've said that because, like, this is, we've got similarities. I haven't got an education with school.
Mm.
I haven't got GCSEs or anything like that. I haven't. And you know what? I done a lot after school. I put myself to college, got qualified. But you know what? I own 2 businesses. I don't think that's too bad.
No, that's pretty good.
You know what I mean?
Fair play.
I got 2 businesses.
Yeah.
I do my social media thing,
Yep.
so I got my skill set in other ways.
Absolutely.
So I might not be intelligent that way. My spelling and grammar, oh my God, it's horrendous. You know what I mean?
Doesn't matter.
I love spell checker.
Yeah, well, it's
But-
saved my backside many a time
Yeah,
with things I've
Exactly.
had to do
It's
recently.
strengths and weaknesses, isn't it? What other
Absolutely
people
is.
are weak on, I'm strong on, and
Yeah.
what I'm weak on, they are strong on.
Let's be perfectly honest. We're all different, and
Mm.
for me, it's about academia. I think is overrated.
Mm.
It's important that we can spell and write and things like that.
Yeah,
But I
'cause
do think there is too much pressure. I've got a child right now who's going through the GCSE process, and the pressure on her to get things right is immense. And when you look at it, you think to yourself, okay, you obtain GCSEs for what reason? To get A levels. For what reason? To get a degree.
Mm.
Once you've got your degree, no one asks about your A levels or even considers your GCSEs.
Mm.
Because the degree sort of outweighs it all. And I understand there has to be a process of building up incrementally
Of course it does. Yeah.
towards having the ability to do research and to write things in certain ways, and I get all that. I get the reason behind it, but I think there's also a lot of people out there who there's a lot of pressure put on, who just aren't academic, but could go and run a business and make it one of the most successful businesses in the world. Example: Richard Branson,
Lord Sugar.
Lord Sugar. People of that ilk who, have left school with nothing, but, they are multi-million and indeed billionaires. And, from a school perspective, probably had horrendous school reports. So
Exactly.
I do think, we learn more after we've left
Through
school,
life.
Through life experiences.
Life teaches us everything.
Totally.
School teaches us the basics, and
Yep.
I think some of
Yeah,
us
it does.
have our intelligence levels in school, and but is school be all and be end of everything? I
No.
said no. And it's like, all right, if you want to go to university, but if you're going to be a brain surgeon or you're going to be a doctor or a dentist, something, I understand all that with the education, but some of us will go that way, and some of us got our skill sets in other ways, and we learn through life.
Well, we can't all be brain surgeons, can we?
No.
That's the thing. But, that led me to, having said all that, that led me to going back to college and doing something called an Access to Higher Education course at Bridgend College. Shout out to Bridgend College. Thank you very much. But, that then got me into university, where I'm currently studying. And I'm currently studying to become a mental health nurse.
Well, they were.
So I've decided that, with all the experience I've had, both personally and through what I've seen in previous jobs, I don't just understand mental health. I really, really understand mental health. So, and that's been, noted in a lot of the service users I've had the privilege of being able to, be part of their treatment plan. Some of the feedback I've had from some of these people is just outstanding. And when you're reading something that somebody's written about you, saying you've made such a positive difference in their lives, and I might have only been in their lives for 4 or 5 weeks on placements and things like that, that really shows me that I am doing something that I am meant to do.
Yeah.
Because for me, it's whereas, for example, certain comedians become comedians to make other people happy because they don't want people to feel as broken as they are. That's the reason I got into nursing. Is because I want to do everything I possibly can to not, to make people the best they can be.
And this is so rewarding.
And yeah, it totally is. And for me, it's not about money. It's not about having a big career or anything like that. It's about being at the ground level and helping people who some of these people have got nobody. Some of these people haven't got a friend in the world who they can turn to and have a conversation with. And sometimes just sitting with somebody, like an elderly person with dementia, for example, no visitors, no family, or they have, but their family sort of abandoned them almost. And just sitting with them and listening to their stories, listening to their life, and taking the time just to be with them and, making sure their
And
medication
that's all some
is
people
right.
need. It's just a bit of time and
Yeah,
understanding.
it's the greatest gift man can give fellow man is time, genuine time. It's not money, it's not a free job, it's not anything else. It's the just give them your time. 5 minutes, 10 minutes, an hour, whatever it takes. But that means so much to somebody that potentially is quite broken because they feel as part of the depression, as you feel incredibly isolated. We touched upon it earlier.
Yeah, yeah.
You just feel incredibly isolated and alone. And for one person to come and put their arm around you and say, I've walked this path, and I know the way out. And it's going to be tough. It's going to be long, and it's going to be hard, but it can be achieved. And that's one thing that I've come to learn through my experiences with university and my personal experiences. Regrettably, mental health is as complex as it is vast, and it really is. It is. Mental health comes in so many different forms.
Of course it does.
All the way from simple low-level social anxiety, right the way down to serious psychosis, Alzheimer's. There is an argument academically: is Alzheimer's mental health or medical health? Personally, I think it's mental health because it's the brain, even though it's organic, which means it's a degradation of the neural pathways within the brain that causes part of the brain to misfire, and that causes, unfortunately, these onto dementia. It also increase chemicals in your brain as well.
Chemical imbalance and all that.
Chemical imbalance. But chemical imbalance also is what causes depression.
Of course it does, yeah. It's all the toxins mixing around, isn't it?
Absolutely. It's a lack of serotonin.
And that's
epinephrine.
And this is why people will have tablets, and I understand that loads of people have, and there's nothing wrong and there's no shame in it. But because the doctors don't understand mental health, they just keep throwing tablet after tablet, and that's what's not helping. Is mixing everything up in here as well and making it worse. And I know that because someone I know that a few months ago he went on to tablets, and he rang me up. He said, "I feel worse." I said, "You need to stop taking them." And he said he went back to the doctor. He said, "We'll give you another one." I said, "No." I said, "Don't. He's going to make it worse for yourself." He still had the other tablets. They made it worse.
Yeah. It does sometimes with medication. It
works for some, not for everyone.
Works for some, not for others. And there's also certain brands of medication will work better with some and better with others.
Is it sertraline? Is the main one?
You've got sertraline, citalopram, paroxetine. They're the lowest level. They're what called an SSRI.
I never personally had them myself because I remember I went to the doctors when I was going through all my stuff and I had my first sort of breakdown. I went to the doctors, sat there. Do you feel suicidal? Yes. Do you do this? Blah, blah, blah. Right, we're going to put you on these tablets. They give me these tablets. I walked out there instantly. I thought, they don't understand what I'm going through. They don't give me tablets. I went to the chemist. I got the tablets. I put them straight in the bin.
Yeah.
I never took them. Yeah. I thought myself, I can't go down this road. And it was my choice. I'm not saying for anyone watching this now, have tablets if it makes you feel better. Honestly, I'm not telling you not to. But for me personally, it was my choice to deal with this and learn myself.
And everybody's different. From my point of view, I'll be honest, I take tablets. I've taken tablets
and that's fine. There's no shame in it, and it works. It was my choice.
For me, it works, and I that was evidence recently where the tablets I was taking was a tablet called paroxetine. I'd been taking it for so long, it had to stop working basically because I could feel myself slipping. And it was actually a colleague at work that said, "Phil, I think you need to go back to the doctors and look at something different." And that's what I did. I went, for a slightly stronger medication, and for me, that has really worked. I've on the medication I'm currently on, which is something called an SNRI, which is a serotonin. I'm trying to remember this now. It'll come to me in a second.
Yeah. All the big words.
Oh,
are
it
there.
is. So you've got the SSRIs, which are your basic, medications they go to first.
Mm.
And then there's an SNRI, which is a specific norepinephrine reuptake inhibitor. And basically, it just works on a different type of chemical that the body releases. So serotonin is the is your lower one. So that's the SSRI, and then the SNRI then is your noradrenaline or norepinephrine sort of chemical that is.
You're very knowledgeable with all this. Fair play to you.
Try to be,
Yeah.
I'm
not with the tablets because I don't get involved in it, so I wouldn't know. But you do.
There's lots of different, and there's different tablets for different things, and there's a lot of epilepsy tablets out there that you use for mental health as well.
Yeah.
And the reason for that is certain aspects of mental health, like ADHD, for example. You've got the brain is the neurons are firing so quickly in the head that they need to be slowed down. It's the same as an epileptic event. So there's certain medications, Epilim, for example, that does that.
Yeah, because medication, it's like, because I got ulcerative colitis, I got, one's called Mezavant and one's called azathioprine.
Okay.
I probably still haven't said that right. It's like, I call it Japanese jug.
I don't see my syndrome.
No, I know. But I know that when I first had them, I've been told they use that kind of tablet in like chemotherapy patients, stuff like that. So they have like multiple purposes.
They do have multiple purposes, absolutely. And, for some people, it is the right thing. But the first thing you have to do in order to get a grips with depression or anxiety is to admit it.
Yes, and a lot of people can't admit that to themselves.
You have to admit that there is something in your life that is making you anxious or making you depressed. And that is incredibly difficult to do. And sometimes that's where counselling comes in, or different versions of counselling. Your cognitive behavioural therapy.
It is.
EMDR is a really good one. That's what allowed me to focus on what caused me my grief, which took me back to that 19-year-old boy. Because I didn't. It's
a starting point. It's always a starting point, and I think that had you hadn't have gone through any of the other stuff that you went through, you might have never have gone through it.
Nope.
But because you had, it heightened everything, didn't it? And it took you back. And that's the thing is going back to the root of the cause. And that's why I always say to people, evaluate your life, who's in your life, because that's what I realized. I realized there was a lot of people around me which was making me feel worse, and they took my vulnerability as weakness. Then, so they used that to their advantage and manipulated. And I give them everything they wanted, and all of a sudden I was living the life they wanted me to live because it suited them.
Absolutely.
And I wasn't happy. I was miserable. As soon as I cut every single one of them, I cut all of them out. Yep. I felt the weight lifted off my shoulder. I felt different.
You've got to. One of the things I've done very recently is, I've looked at my telephone book, and I've now got two telephones. I've got a telephone for my friends like yourself, and I've got a telephone for everybody else. And the telephone
acquaintances, friends.
Yeah, absolutely. And and the one telephone is on sort of between 9 and 5 Monday to Friday, and after that it's switched off, or it's on in a drawer. But the people I've got in my phone book now is a very small number, but they are a number of people who I know that at 2:30 in the morning, if Phill had a problem, I could just dial any one of those numbers, and I know I'll be there now.
Well.
That's a difference.
And that's the thing. I cut everybody out, right? But what I've done is surround myself by better people. Yourself, right? There's a few people that I've interacted with on TikTok, like Jonathan, right? Stephen, and I've become with Jonathan. I've become close with Jonathan. So I'm building up with yourself a new friendship group, right? With genuine people, which we're all like-minded.
Yeah.
And that's important. So I'm surrounding myself with positive people, happy, and I always say surround yourself with like-minded people, people which are going to pick you up when you fall, and people are going to pat you on the back and say, "Oh, you're doing well. You can do a little bit more." Encourage you, support you, and not be jealous of the journey, but enjoy it with you.
Absolutely.
It was like. I don't know. Did you see the food challenge that Colin done yesterday?
To be honest, I haven't. I finished work rather late last night, and it was a 12-hour shift. So I got home. I had some food. And I got to be honest, I went to bed.
Well,
So
sorry,
exactly.
you see at some point, but
I will watch it,
he
I
done
will.
well. And ironically, TikTok, get your act together, but because I put that video up, they violated me because I wanted in the video myself.
What?
I know.
Disgraceful.
So he went and he wanted to do this food challenge and he wanted to do it for Andy's Man's Club for the mental health.
Brilliant cause.
And he wanted to raise money for it. So I've been doing videos all week. He's been doing videos all week. And I was really excited about it. I was excited to the point that I thought I was doing the challenge myself. But I was excited for him because he'd never done a food challenge and he wanted to do it for mental health because he suffers with mental health really bad himself as well. And it was important to him. So I was really excited for him. And that's what friends do.
Absolutely.
You get excited for each other, you know?
I watch your videos, Steve, and I say, "Come on, go for it."
That's
and that's what it's about. It's not about trying.
Is that when I'm eating food?
I wish I was there.
I know.
When you get your beer out and just like, what have I got in the cupboard? Water. But no, that's what it's all about, isn't it? It's about supporting and helping like-minded people.
Yeah.
Because when we are vulnerable, we've got a neon light on our head that says vulnerable, vulnerable.
Yeah.
I'm sure of this. It flashes, and you get it attracts leeches.
Yeah.
It does. It attracts all the people, all the degenerate, horrible, disgusting, malicious individuals in life will swarm towards you. And I'm your friend. I'll help. I'm your friend. I'm your friend. And it's like it is. It's like a narcissistic relationship. It's how it begins. It's they feed you a bit. Oh, we'll help you with this. We'll give you that. And you think, oh, this is a lovely person.
I know.
This person's going to help me. And I've had this in when I've been in business myself. People come into your life. Oh, Phil's got a bit of money. Oh, right, okay. Well, if we'll use him, and then we'll get to where I want to go, and then we'll get rid of him. Because it's all about me now. And that's happened to me a few times.
Oh yeah.
But ultimately, you are incredibly, when you're ill, you're incredibly vulnerable.
Yeah.
And this is the thing about depression or mental illness that people really don't understand. Mental illness does not go away. Okay? There is, in Phil's opinion, other people may disagree, I have never in my life ever seen anyone who has fully got rid of a mental illness, has fully recovered from it and says, I am not affected by this anymore, it doesn't affect me. You control it, absolutely, you can control it through, positive interventions, medication, whatever it is that works for you, it can be controlled. But it can't ever be completely vanquished. And I fully believe that. Now, the problem we have in society is that a person goes, say, off work with a mental illness, and they're off work for, say, 10 months. Or 10 weeks in, They get themselves better or to a place where they can function again, they go back to work. But as soon as they go back to work, that same level of pressure is applied to them before they go back, before they went off in the first place. So what do? They stick with it, stick with it, stick with it, stick with it. Bam, they're off a second time. Because the raw issue has not been addressed.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah? We are not addressing the core issue. You can throw as much counselling, medication, whatever it is, at a situation. It is not going to solve it.
No.
The only way you are going to solve it, unfortunately, is for individuals themselves to go, I am fed up of feeling like this. I don't want to feel like this anymore.
And do something
and
else.
I have to address this because it isn't going to go away on its own. And that is where I'd like to think people like Steve and indeed myself are here for you. Because that journey needs like-minded people who have been through it to be able to support you and be able to follow you on that journey. And if you stumble, help pick you up.
Exactly, pick you up when you fall.
Absolutely. And that's what it's all about. And once you've then got to the end of the road yourself, you then leave the life that you want to leave. But also, you understand the condition, and I think it motivates an awful lot of people. Like, I'll give you a statistic. An awful lot of people that work as mental health nurses suffer or have suffered themselves with a mental health condition.
Oh, yeah, I believe that. Yeah.
The vast majority of people I've worked with as a mental health nurse have said, I've suffered, or I suffer. And they go into that role because they know how it feels, and they know, sort of ways to make people feel not just physically better about themselves by giving them medication and counselling, but just letting them know that you really understand what they're going through. That empathy, that true, honest, pure empathy that someone can only give if they have experienced it.
course they can, and I always say the best counsellors in the world are the ones that have lived and experienced it, and
Yes,
the
yes.
ones which are qualified and haven't been through it are the worst counsellors in the world. And
Unfortunately, yeah, you're right.
yeah, and
Yeah.
touch up when you say, because someone asked me a good few weeks ago, saying, "Oh, can you learn to deal with it and then it disappears completely?" And I said, like you said, no, absolutely not. And they say, well, but you're always all right. I said, no, I'm not. I said, you think I'm always all right, but I said the difference is, when I do a video, and sometimes I will say, I'm not feeling great today, I'm not depressed, I'm just feeling a bit sad or feel a bit low in mood, because I know that is the start of it. So then I go, right, what is making me sad?
Yeah.
Why am I feeling low in mood?
Yep.
And then I will make sure I do everything.
Yep.
So by day 2 or 3, I'm starting to feel great again. If I don't,
That's the trick.
and then a week later, then I'll say, now I'm getting depressed.
Yep.
And that's the thing. But I've learned to manage it. I've learned my coping mechanisms. I've learned how to deal with it, and that's why I'm as positive as I possibly could be all the time.
Yeah.
But now and again, I had it the other day, and it was literally a day where I just got up, and for some reason I was like, I don't feel it today. I didn't say nothing to anyone at the time because I wasn't making a big deal, because I thought, I think I'm going to be all right for this afternoon. And I just got up, and I think I was overthinking things a little bit in my head. And so I realized, I pinpointed that, right, I sleep, right? You're thinking of this, you're thinking of that, but you don't need to.
Yeah.
And then I was like, you can't change it, Steve. Take your own advice here. You can't control it. You can't change it. And I went, all right, that's done then.
Yeah.
And I was all right then.
Yep.
So
Absolutely right.
otherwise, things like that can fester, and it can lead into day 2, day 3, day 4, day 5. You get past a week, you're going into depression
It
again.
becomes the new depression.
Yeah.
That seed, depression's like a weed.
It is.
effectively.
It grows.
Unless you grab it by the root and
Mm.
pull it out, it's never going to go away. It's going to come back, and it's going to come back, and it's going to come back. But having the courage to grab hold of that thistly, thorny weed and pull it out, it's going to hurt as you're pulling it out. So there's no way getting around that.
And the hardest thing though is, like I just said, no, sorry, I didn't mean to cut you across you then.
That's right.
But it's like with me, is I identify. I will sit there for a bit of time to identify why I'm feeling like I'm on a day.
Yeah.
But people still find it hard to. But if they don't, that's when it can prolong.
Absolutely.
You have to, and like I did on that day, because I found the root to the problem, I nipped it in the bud just like that.
Yeah.
And then I pulled that root back out.
The simple answer is you've got to know yourself.
Mm.
You've got to be true to yourself. You've
Yeah,
got to be
100%.
able to look in the mirror and say, right, this is me and this is how I feel today. As you know, because we discussed it previously, I call them red, amber, and green days. And
Yes, and I think that's a brilliant way to.
for
go through it.
me, that's how I work. And Stu and I, when we go, how's your day, Stu? Oh, a bit amber today. Or I'm having a green one. I'm the green one, Phil. Great, life's brilliant. A bit red today. And it's the way that we communicate, and I think that's a really good way moving forward.
What are you today then?
I'm a green today.
Good. I'm a green as well.
I'm a green today.
I'm a
I've got to
green
be
as well.
honest.
Good.
It was a bit amber coming here because I was
Yeah.
nervous. I've never done anything like this before.
I was even more green this morning. I tell you why, right? Because you mentioned about biscuits and tea before. When I went in the biscuit tin, Emily's eating them all.
What?
So I was green. I was like the Incredible Hulk green. Then.
Yeah, you could say angry green.
She doesn't know that yet. I was just in the kitchen on my own. Going,
How dare we?
Yeah.
But no, but there is a positive note to all this, guys. Okay, ultimately, you've heard part of my journey. All right, there's more I could bore you with. I could sit here for hours and just talk rubbish. But ultimately, look, I've been there. Okay, I've been through the battlefield myself, and I really understand what it's like to get shot. It hurts, and it puts you on your backside, and it really, really does. But ultimately, if there are just a few people out there who have had similar sort of stories to myself, and have been in certain similar situations, I just wanted to come on here specifically for you, okay? And I just want to show that there is an end to it. It can be managed. You can come through this the other side. You just have to keep on pushing. And I know it's hard. I know it is hard. But there are forums out there. There are, mental health charities. There's lots of people, like Steve, or specifically Steve, who gets it and understand it. The only thing I would counsel against is also a lot of people potentially on this platform who pretend to understand
Fakes.
it and will use your vulnerabilities or could use your vulnerabilities against you. So be discerning with what you say to people. And what I mean by that is sound people out. Don't trust somebody 100% straight away, because what we want to do as somebody that's suffering at a point is we want someone to help us there and then. And if we think someone's offering that help, you know, without even giving it a second thought or putting any sort of checks and balances in place. Then we just launch ourselves towards that help, like a lighthouse
That's
in
true.
a darkened sea, effectively.
Mm.
And we have to be so careful that that lighthouse actually isn't, you know, a shipwrecker stood on the shore waving a lamp like they used to down in Cornwall back in the 1700s, ready to wreck ships. And, you know, there are unfortunately people out there who, for their own perverse pleasure, do that type of thing. And people out there need just to be very careful about the information that they give to others, because it can come back and you know, be used against you. So please listen to that if nothing else.
Yeah, I'm glad Phill has said all that because it is important. I've had many of people. Obviously, this will be streamed onto YouTube and it's on TikTok right now. This segment and that, and mental health is real. Is very important, and it is a load of people on this app which are portraying to say they understand mental health and doing these videos and saying inbox me, and a lot of those people, because I've had loads of people come to me and they don't even get a return of that inbox. No. And I tell you why, because they don't understand mental health and they are just putting the videos out there for a bit of clout and to earn monetary value off and stuff like that. Ever since I've been on TikTok, it's always been about helping and support the people. Never hide the fact that I do get paid from platforms, but that was just an added bonus over time that it just kind of happened. But mental health is always going to be close to my heart, it's close to Phil's heart, it's close to many of your heart, and it is real. Make sure you reach out, but you reach out to the right people, not the wrong people. Everyone gets a response to me through TikTok. Anyone that has ever messaged me will always get a response one way or another, because I will always help and I will always support. And Phill will always do his thing, and I'm sure that me and Phill maybe will do another podcast in the near future, again, to try and address everyone and get behind everyone and support and offer that support, because more support is needed out there. There's not enough support out there. I think more people like myself and Phill are trying our best. But as always, I say to you guys, you can always message me at any time and I'll always be there to help and support. And this is what these podcasts are about, is people to come on, talk about all different things. And the ones that want to talk about mental health and their journeys, like Phill did, he showed raw emotion today. Come on, have a chat with me. It can help so many people out there. This podcast alone, I know, will help hundreds of people because they will relate to it, because there'll be segments on TikTok and the full one is on YouTube. So...
Well, there's a lot more I could say.
Yeah.
I think this probably is a decent place now to round it up.
We'll round it up and we'll do another one at another time. Actually, I am looking, because Jonathan mentioned this to me before. When I get this relocated to work, I'm going to invest some money in some more equipment, because what I would like to do is get some more mics, and I would like to connect the dots with like Jonathan, you, me, Stuart, all like-minded people that I've had on, and get some of us, 3 of us, from you 4 of us in a room at a time talking about this kind of stuff. Absolutely. Which is going to be empowering, and they're all good people like yourself anyway. So
that's good to know, and maybe if I could just ask this as well to your viewers, would there be any traction or any interest in perhaps you and I doing some segments where we discuss specific elements of mental health, like, for example, what is depression?
Yes.
What is anxiety? How is it caused? How can it be treated? And so on like that. And maybe pick on certain, mental health conditions that everyday people suffer with. Yeah. And turning it into something that everyone then can understand what that condition is, how it affects people, and how it can be treated effectively.
Absolutely.
And I don't know whether or not you think that might be a good idea yourself.
I think it would be good for the viewers, to make it maybe like a 20-minute video or something, or a 10-minute video or something, just little segments.
Just a little segment of, look, this is what depression is. This is effectively how it's caused. The cause is going to be different for each individual.
Of course it can.
But but this perhaps is a bit of a guide how to maybe navigate yourself through it. And the same with narcissistic relationships, again, through my
I could talk about that all day long as well.
Well, through my previous career, unfortunately, I've dealt with that several times. I really know I've given away what I used to do, I'm sure, with that.
I think you guys can work it out, but I'm not going to say it. It's only Phill if you want to say it. But
I'll say I was a policeman. There you go. I wasn't quite as fat as I am now, so I could run after people. And climb over walls. But I know towards the end of my career, I was rather lardy. But yeah, I was a cop, guys, and I don't.
They would have gathered up in the voice.
Yeah. And the reason
PC Phill.
Yeah, PC Phill. And the reason I don't tell people is, I want people to judge me, not my previous job.
No.
And that's why. That's the honest.
And you've got, and the thing is, yeah, exactly. You've got people to get to know you now, and you've put that in at the end of the podcast. People get to know you as a person, not like at the beginning. Oh, I'm Phill. I used to be a police officer. Because there's a lot of people that do judge on that, but not, there's and it's important to say. I got to say this. I got to add this in as well. Do you know what? I've had the pleasure of meeting some lovely police officers, and there's one of my customers, Carl Williams. Give him a shout out again, which is a police officer, and I see him quite a lot. He's always gives me work, and constantly, and he is such a lovely guy. He's not in the police no more. I think he retired about 5 years ago. But it's important to understand there is a lot of good police.
Oh yes,
and there's a lot of bad police.
Yeah, there are.
It is truth.
There are. And in my experience, I will say this: there are far more good than bad.
Yes, yeah, of course it is.
There are people all day long that if they were investigating me personally, or if they were investigating a crime that I reported, I would trust 100% would do a thorough and decent and honest job.
Yeah, and that's what you want.
Unfortunately, I also know a number who would cut corners. They call it cuffing in the job. Would cuff it, and would make something out of something that wasn't there if necessary.
Yeah.
But all jobs have those elements of
of course they do.
It's not just the police; it's every walk of life.
Yeah.
But I was proud to do the job for the time I did it. It's just unfortunately for me the job made me unwell because, like I said, I was trying to be somebody I wasn't. And when you're doing that every day and you're scared to go to work, genuinely scared to go to work, not because of the work you're doing, because you have to for the next 12 hours put on this front that isn't you.
And a question to ask, I already know the answer to it. Are you Phill now?
Yes.
There you are. And like I'm Steve. Like I said before I go for everyone, and that's why I said before about the mirror is important to me. Yep. Where I used to stand in the mirror, I stand in that mirror now and I smile. I go, Steve, you're not a bad looking guy. And I like the image looking back at me. And I do that all the time. So the mirror now is my best friend. Yeah. Where before, he wasn't. He was the worst person to me.
Totally.
Because that reflection looking back, I hated it. Now I love it. Yeah. I love who I am as a person. I will never, like you, let anyone bring me down again. No. The tops I wear, the mental health hoodies, they're so powerful. Just those simple wording on it means a lot. And those words on the front of that, on those tops, you are enough. And that's what I said to you. You are, I am, these guys are. We all are. More than enough for the right people.
Absolutely. And that's the thing to take away from this, guys, at the end of it all. Surround yourself with good people, yeah?
100%.
Surround yourself with good people. And, those people who want something from you, those people that never in your back, those people that only come into your life and they have got a problem, get rid of them. Because they're leeches and they will only drag you down in the end.
They will. And do you know what? Colin yesterday, he's such a lovely guy. When he done the food challenge, I said to him, because I said to him when he was on the live, I said, right, I'll pay if you win or lose, because you still have to pay for the meal, but it would be £5. I said, I'll pay for all this. And he goes, no, honestly. And I said, no, I'll pay for it. So anyway, he goes to the toilet, come back. He goes, no, you're not paying for it. He said, I'll pay for it, and I just pay for your coffee. But it shows he's a genuine person, He could have quite easy. A lot of people would have gone, yeah, okay then. Yeah. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it was just to see it offered. I wanted to pay for him, but he was like, no. So it shows he's a genuine person. Right.
So did you offer to pay for it after you saw the receipt?
No, I was like, forget that. I'm off with the toilet.
Trying to climb the window.
Yeah, but Phill, it's been a pleasure.
Thank you, Steve.
Having you on, and and I'm sure everybody is going to enjoy this podcast as much as I've enjoyed doing it with you.
Well, I hope it brings some enlightenment to some and helps some, and just keep positive, guys. Keep watching Steve and his antics. He's great. He makes me smile on a daily basis when I watch it.
I make myself smile. Even brother Steve makes me smile on times.
Yeah, and if you want to see more of
Colin, let me know, and I'll bring it back with his friends.
Yeah.
So long, guys.
Yeah.